Yuri
Felshtinsky, historian, author of the book FSB Blows Up Russia. Hello, Yuri. Your version, Yuri, who could it be and what could it be? A few days ago, as everybody remembers, the American embassy warned its citizens who live in Moscow that there is a possibility of a terrorist attack. Then it followed by the warning from other embassies of America's allies. The source of this information could be only the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation, because it's very hard to believe that Americans knew about the possible terrorist attack in Russia and FSB didn't know anything about it. Well, at least after all this information was published, it was clear that somebody is preparing a terrorist attack in Moscow. I think that this terrorist attack was prepared by FSB. This is the reason why Americans were informed about it, but I'm sure they informed Americans in a different context. FSB told the Americans that they know that Ukrainians and the Western security services are preparing a terrorist attack in Moscow. Then Americans realized that the terrorist attack will happen, and they warned their citizens that there will be a terrorist attack in Moscow. Clearly that Western security services were not preparing this terrorist attack, and clearly the Ukrainians didn't do it either. We can't say that it was prepared by some Islamic terrorists either. And it's clear why, because Putin today is the best friend of Iran, Hezbollah and Hamas. They're his allies. Theoretically, of course, we can talk about groups of people who got armed because after Navalny's death, everybody in Russia who has anything to do with the opposition, it became clear that without weapons, without arms, you can't really fight against this regime. But nevertheless, I don't think that these are some radicals, some radical oppositionists, because after all, their enemies are not civilians and peaceful people. Their enemies are different people, those who sit in different buildings, in Lubyanka, in FSB building, in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and in the Kremlin. So now the question is, why was it done, and what consequences could be? I think that consequences are clear. They will be toughening the regime, and Medvedev, the Deputy Secretary of the Security Council of Russia, and he is a sort of harbinger of the happening events, and he is already talking about bringing back the death penalty in the Russian Federation, and I think that this is what they may announce soon. And of course they will announce that it was done by either the Western intelligence or Ukrainians or Navalny's supporters who did that. And of course they will toughen the regime. Will it formally entail the death penalty? We will see. The Russian Duma is supposed to come up with the law about it. We'll see. And I'm sure that we'll see another wave of strikes against civil facilities of Ukraine. And right after the election, actually, they intensified their strikes against Ukraine. Yuri, I also would like to say a couple of words about the pattern of this terrorist attack. How does it look like? Is it similar to Nordost, or is it similar to what was done in France, in Baraklava a few years ago? Is it a big group, they say? It's from 5 to 20 people, according to different sources. And they also said that this is not confirmed yet, but we get this information from different sources. They spoke about a car that was rigged with explosives and left on the parking lot near the building. But we didn't get a confirmation about it. So this pattern, what does it tell us? It's not a bomb in the subway. It's not a terrorist attack attack in a shopping mall. They chose this particular place with a big crowd, and surely they were preparing for a long time. This is a terrorist group of 10 or 20 people. If they say so, then we should suppose that these people, for all this time, they were preparing this serious operation to get into this concert hall. And it's hard to believe that nobody knew anything about it, nobody heard anything about it. It's impossible to believe that. See, if they were terrorists, they would have done this terrorist attack before the election or right during the election, but after the election to do a terrorist attack. Why? The consequences of this terrorist attacks, let's put it this way, to destabilize situation in Russia and to destabilize the election situation. This terrorist attack wouldn't do. All terrorist attacks that we know and the pattern of those attacks is different. Nordost, it was so-called controlled terrorist attack. This is a terrorist attack that FSB knew about and kind of allowed it for their own reasons. Beslan school terrorist attack, that's a classical terrorist attack of Chechen separatists fighting for their independence. Explosions of the buildings in Moscow, that was a terrorist attack of FSB. They were preparing for the election in 2000 to bring Putin in power. So all these terrorist attacks are different, and over time, and maybe quite soon, we will get more information and we will be able to put this puzzle together. But what should we expect? I'm sure that they will tell us about some Ukrainian trace or some Western intelligence trace or a trace of Russian extremists that are backed by Western intelligence or Ukrainian security service. But in any way they'll try to sell us this Ukrainian trace. But will we know, and how soon will we know what was happening? So let's see. We just need to study the information and to collect all this information. Yuri, but in general, how does it happen in practice? How quickly it becomes clear in such situation when nobody is taking responsibility for the terrorist attack? There is no, like, some representative of Islamic State and says that this is us who did that. How quickly they can investigate and get first conclusions? You see, if there were only 3 people, 3 terrorists, then it's very easy to track it down. If there were 20 people, then of course they could have left a lot of traces, and some of the terrorists might have survived, and they could have been interrogated, and the government could have some evidence and share this evidence with the public. Let's put it this way. Given the scale of the terrorist attack, yes, it is very similar to Nordost musical terrorist attack. The facilities they chose for the attack and the number of terrorists that took part in it, it's very similar to Nordost musical attack. And as I said, Nordost terrorist attack was a controlled attack. What we know, at least one of the terrorists survived it. And Anna Politkovskaya, the journalist that was killed later, she investigated it and she found it out. That man who survived, he was an agent of the Russian security service. He left the building before it was stormed. Then he was in Chechnya and allegedly was killed in Chechnya. Was he there? Was he killed? We don't know. But what we know, he left the building untouched, and he was the only person who wasn't injured or wounded in this terrorist attack. And what we know, he was the person that they controlled the terrorist attack through. What's important to understand that when it is a special operation, not everything goes according to the plan. It happens quite often, and probably statistically it is even more often than when such operations go smoothly. So if even we assume that it was backed by the Russian security services, and I think it's correct assumption, given that we have a 2-year war, and the Russian security service, they have certain experience of undermining activity against their own citizens. Though we should not exclude this terrorist attack was masterminded somehow differently, and given that it was a forewarning, and it's very unstandard. I would say it's unprecedented, and I think we discussed it with you on air after the 8th of March when we had this warning from the United States. Thank you very much. It was Yuri, the author of the book FSB Blows Up Russia. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for watching this video. Please like it, subscribe to the channel, and tell about us to your friends, and we'll have a bigger audience and more people will learn about important things that we talk about on this channel. Thank you very much. Like it and subscribe. Thank you.